Solving equations involving vertical angles. Okay, so with this one, we need to know what is a vertical angle. So if I know what a vertical angle is, then I will automatically know what z is. So anytime we have a crisscross, I can cross lines however I want. If I go straight across the vertex like this, and I have these two angle marks here, and I know that looks kind of funky, like just weird looking eyeballs here, but these two angles will be congruent. I can do the same thing going this way. I'm going to do two arcs on this one, like that. So one arc to one arc, two arcs to two arcs, and I know that's kind of funky looking there with all the arcs, but we can go across the vertex, and we call that a vertical angle. So I can do that same thing here. If I want to go across the vertex here, and I have these two angles, well, then I know z is 83. I already know what z is. I don't have to do any extra math on that one. All I have to do is know the definition of vertical angles. And I already know the answer to z is 83 degrees. All right, now we need to find this other one here. So we need to know what supplementary angles are, because that's what they're going with on this next part. So supplementary angles have to do with angles that add up to 180. And if we have a line, and I'm going on this one here. So if we go like this, and I can go around this one, and this is a line. And the reason I'm arcing around it is because I wanted to grab both of these amounts. But a line, if I go like this is 180 degrees. But why is it 180 degrees? Well, let's think of a circle. If I keep going around, and we're going to pretend like that is actually a circle and not an oval. But if I keep going around, if I start here and I go all the way around, that's a 360. And most students seem to know that from usually some kind of sport like skateboarding or biking or something like that. So the spinning all the way around is a 360. If I only spin halfway, so I stop on the line here, that's a 180. So that's why it's 180 degrees. So we know that this is 180 degrees, this line. Well, if I have two angles on that line together right next to each other, then they have to add up to 180 degrees. That's the angle addition rule. The two angles have to add up to the bigger angle. So I can take 8x plus 33 plus 83 degrees, because I have this other 83, and those two together have to equal 180 degrees. So now I just start solving it, which is exactly what they're doing here. And they even show you this in parentheses to show you that it's a quantity. This is one angle, this is the other angle. Okay? And then the parentheses aren't really necessary. They're just showing you that it's a quantity. So that's why they start adding. They just add 33 and 83 together, because the parentheses don't mean anything other than just showing you that that is one angle, that's a quantity. So then they add them together and they get 116. And they bring the 8x down because there's nothing to add to it. And that equals 180. And then they take this 116 away on both sides. They're only showing you the one side here. So we'll work this out a little differently on the next page here. So here, I'll show you down right here. Plus 116 equals 180. What they're doing is they're taking it away from both sides like this. So remember, there's always two sides of an equation. And they bring 8x down, and that equals 64. We have positive 116, negative 116. When we subtract, because they're opposites, we get 0. That's why it disappears over here. All of a sudden, it's gone because we subtracted it. And then what they're doing is dividing by 8 on both sides to undo this multiplication here. So 8 divided by 8 becomes 1. So x drops down by itself, and we have 64 divided by 8, which is 8. So they're not showing you the full step on each one, but that's exactly what they're doing here. All right, so let's go ahead and clear this, and we're going to give this a try. Okay, so in this one, if we want to find x first, we're going to cross the vertex between these two like this. So 81 and 13x minus 75 have to equal the same thing. So 13x minus 71 has to equal 81 degrees because they're vertical angles, and vertical angles are always congruent no matter what. Vertical angles are congruent. You don't have to have anything else other than two lines crossing, and vertical angles are congruent. So we get to go through and solve this equation here. So we need to know what is x, because that's what they want, the amount they want to know. So we're going to start getting x by itself. The first step is to add or subtract. So this is minus 75. To undo minus, I'm going to add on both sides of my equal sign here. So 13x drops down, and then negative 75, positive 75, they're opposites. I subtract and I get 0. 81 plus 75, let's see, we get 156. And now we want to undo this multiplication. This is the last step to get x by itself. So I want to undo multiplication, and I undo that with division. Make sure you do it on both sides of your equal sign. 13 divided by 13, or any number divided by itself, becomes 1, and x drops down by itself. And now we just need to figure out 13 divided by 156. If you don't know that right off the top of your head, sorry, 156 divided by 13, I said that backwards. That's fine. You can use a calculator. You can kind of estimate it if you want to. So if I said 13 times 10, well, that's 130. You know it's going to be more than that. So you could always say, well, I'm going to try 12 because I think it's a couple more than 10. So I go through and I get 6, I get 2, I get 3, and I get 1. Now when I put them all together, oh, look at that. It's 156. So that was just me kind of guessing off the top of my head, saying, well, I know it's more than 10. I think it's more, it's not 11. I'm going to try 12. If it wasn't 12, if 12 was too small, try 13. 12 is too big, go back to 11. So there's a way to do this without a calculator. It's just you kind of have to use a little bit of logic to get the right range. So I know times 10 is too small, so I'm going to go more than 10. So that's why I chose 13. So anyway, that's just division really quick there, figuring that out, because as long as I know that 13 times 12, oh, and see, I wrote 156 because I'm talking too much here. So 13 times 12 gets me 156. Well, then that means 156 divided by 13 is 12. So I can use multiplication to go kind of backwards to get the number I'm aiming for. And you can also just use division too. So we could have written this out like this with 13. Goes in one time. We bring 6 down. We have 26. Oh, that's 2 of them. So there we go. We get 12 again. So either method can work. It just depends on which one works better for you. All right, so we know 12 is, or x is 12. So let's go ahead and find our z. So let's switch this color up. So now we're going to look at z here. And because they're angles right next to each other, I can't do vertical angles anymore. But they are on a line together. And remember, a line is 180. And if I know a line is 180 degrees, if I add these two together, 81 plus z, this is a z, I'm going to put a little cross in here so you don't think it's a 2. These two together have to add, or the sum have to be 180. So now to find z, all I have to do is subtract 180 from both sides of my my equation. So let's see, we're going to have to borrow for that one. So you get 9. Technically, we'd borrow again, but to kind of make 17 already. So we'd end up with 99. So 99, 81 minus 81, that cancels, that becomes 0. And then we just have z drop down. So z must be 99 degrees. All right, so let's go ahead and put 12 and 9 and check. All right, so we're going to do this a couple more times here and then we'll be all done with it. Oops, help if I click next. All right, so we're doing the same thing here. We have vertical angles. We can go right across. I know that 10x minus 64 has to equal 96 degrees. So there you go. I already have my equation. We just need to write it over here and start working it out. 96. So I'm going to start getting x all by itself. I'm going to add 64 to both sides of my equation. And 10x gets brought down. I haven't done anything with 10x, so I'm going to bring it down. Negative 64 plus 64, they're opposites. And when I subtract, I get 0, which is what I wanted. I do want those to kind of disappear in a way because I'm moving it to the other side. So now I'm going to add these, and I end up with 160 because there was a carryover here. All right, so now I'm going to divide both sides by 10 because remember, we're trying to undo that multiplication. 10 divided by 10, any number divided by itself becomes 1. X drops down by itself. 160 divided by 10. So if you have two numbers, if you're dividing by 10 and they both end in 0, you can just cross the 0 off. And then 16 divided by 1 is just 16. So that's kind of a quick way to do division multiplication on that one. dividing by 10. I'm being silly with my words today. So I have 16. All right, let's do a different color here for this other one. So now we have, I wrote that in the wrong spot. Darn it. I'm just losing my marbles today. This is 16, not Z. We need to find Z. So we're going to start finding Z. So if I look at Z here, I know it's next to 96. So we're going to do that same thing with supplementary angles. And they have to be right next to each other like this so that we're on a line together. So remember, a line is 180 degrees, and that equals these two added together. So this is Z again. So in order to solve for this, I'm going to subtract 96 from both sides. And I end up with, let's see, that'll be 7, 10, 4. I technically have to borrow again, and this would be 8. Equals 96 minus 96 cancels to 0, and then Z drops down by itself. So Z has to be 84. All right, so we get 16 and 84, and check. All righty, one more. Okay, so now we're going to go opposites again. So I'm actually going to look at Z first because I can see right away these are vertical angles. So if this top side is 83, the bottom side is also 83 degrees. So I already know Z is 83. I don't have to do anything else for that one. Yay. We're all done with that one. Now I have to deal with this other piece to find X. So these are on a line together. They're right next to each other. So I'm going to go like this. Here's my line. And remember, these two have to add up to 180 degrees like this. So both these together equal 180 degrees. I have to add them together to get that. And that's, sorry, a plus sign if you look sideways at it. It looks a little bit like a multiplication sign if I look straight at it. I meant plus, not multiply. And then remember 12x plus 25. This is one piece. And on the front screen, they put parentheses around it just to show that it's one quantity. The parentheses are not necessary. They don't need to be there. All right, so let's add our like terms. We have 83 and 25. Those are just constants, meaning just numbers. So we can add those two together. So we get 8 and we get 10, 108, plus 12x. All right, now we can start solving this guy because it's simplified on one side. So from both sides of the equation, I want to start undoing what's being done to the x. And I'm going to start with addition and subtraction. Be careful when it's written this way. I have a lot of students that start with, well, it's plus 12. It's a positive 12 being multiplied by x. With addition and subtraction, I mean look at the number that is a constant, meaning it doesn't have a variable next to it. And that's what we're going to undo first. So there's nothing in front of this as far as plus or minus, but that means positive. It means it's a positive 108. So in order to move it, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to subtract 108 from both sides here. 180 minus 108, so we'd have to borrow here. We get 2 and 7 and 0, so we get 72. Equals 108 minus 108. That cancels to 0, which is what we wanted to happen. And now we're going to bring down 12x. All right, in order to get x by itself, I need to divide by 12 on both sides. And let's see. For this one, you couldn't necessarily write this one out in just a nice little division sign, and I'll show you because 72, oops, I meant to write 72. So 72 and 12. Well, I can't just, like that very first one we did where it kind of easily went in, I'm going to have to know how many 12s go fully into 72. So again, if you know your multiplication facts, this makes it so much faster. If you don't know your multiplication facts, you might just have to guess around a little bit. So let's say 12 times 5. Let's go with that. So we have 10, 5, 6. Well, that's not big enough. So let's go 12 times 6. And we get 12, 6, 7. Oh, there we go. So this is what we want. We want 6 times here. So I know 72 divided by 12 is 6. Equals 12 divided by 12 is 1. Any number divided by itself. And x drops down by itself. So x is 6. All right. So we have 6 and we have, whoops, I put a 7 on there. And 83. And we're going to check that. All right, we finished another one. Yay.